Here's what I see. Putin has reneged on every promise that he has made to President Trump. His latest proposal is, well, nothing. He wants to keep all the territory that he's taken. He wants to prohibit Ukraine from joining NATO, and he wants America and Europe to stop helping Ukraine. I think that Putin thinks that America has taken the bullet train to Chunktown. I think he thinks we're afraid of him. He has jacked around President Trump at every turn. He has disrespected our president. I don't think it's going to get any better until we make it clear to Mr. Putin that we are willing to turn him and his country into fish food. And I'm not talking about nuclear weapons or nuclear war. I would start with oil, which I will be glad to talk about if you want.
That was Republican Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana finding his tongue as it relates to Russia-Ukraine, even going so far as to say Putin has jacked around Trump at every turn. This comes fewer than 48 hours after Chuck Grassley took to Twitter, writing, "I've seen enough killing of innocent Ukrainian women and children. President Trump, please put the toughest of sanctions on Putin. You ought to see from clear evidence that he is playing America as a patsy." I covered Grassley's tweet when he posted it on Friday, and I want to show you a brief clip from my coverage then. Isn't it interesting that a party that exists to pray at the altar of Trump suddenly begins to find its spine as soon as Trump's approval ratings begin to crater? I can assure you that last month, not a single Republican senator, certainly not Chuck Grassley, would have spoken out publicly against Trump. Now you've got Chuck Grassley publicly tweeting that under Trump's leadership, the US is being played as a patsy at the hands of Russia? I know that this is only one piece of anecdotal evidence, but I think it signals that the dam is breaking and that these Republicans are beginning to rightfully recognize that Trump isn't the boom he frames himself as, but rather a massive liability. And lo and behold, it took not even 2 days before another Republican senator found enough courage to speak out in opposition to Trump's pro-Putin position as it relates to the Russia-Ukraine war. And if you're wondering why, it's because suddenly the prospect of a mean tweet from Donald Trump has taken a backseat to a more immediate problem for the Republican Party, which is that Americans are souring on Trump in droves and therefore jeopardizing the party's power moving forward, including their own. The latest polling shows Trump underwater on literally every single issue polled, from immigration to the economy, managing the federal government, trade, foreign conflicts, deportations. But take a look at the single worst issue he's got, negative 21 points on Russia-Ukraine. Alongside the illegal deportation of Kilmar Braco Garcia, more Americans disapprove of this issue than anything else he's done. And these Republicans, like John Kennedy, know that because they've tied themselves so closely to Trump, whatever he does now dirties them. And what he's doing is clearly really unpopular. And by the way, that is bearing itself out already in special elections across the country. Just a few weeks ago, the two Republican candidates in Florida's special elections underperformed by 16 points and 22 points from the party's 2024 margin. In Wisconsin, liberal Supreme Court Justice nominee Susan Crawford overperformed the 2024 presidential election contest by 11 points en route to her victory in that race. In Pennsylvania, Democrats overperformed by 15 points and 17 points in 2 state legislative seats en route to victories there, one of which solidified Democratic control of the Pennsylvania State House, and the other of which flipped a seat from red to blue. Those results match the national trends that we're seeing so far in special elections across the U.S. Of the 16 races held since Election Day, Democrats are seeing an 11.4% swing to the left, with 2 of those races seeing Democrats flip seats formerly held by Republicans. According to the Strength in Numbers newsletter from data scientist Elliot Morris, now, thanks to the Down Ballots data archives, we can compare the average swing in special elections in 2025 to the average swing in special elections in 2017. There were 67 state legislative special elections held in 2017 for the 2018 midterm cycle, according to their tracking. In those, Democratic candidates beat Hillary Clinton's margins versus Trump in 2016 by 11 points. So an 11-point swing for Democrats in 2017 and 10 points for 2025 so far. 10 is not so different from 11. And of course, you'll remember that Democrats then won the House by the biggest margin in modern American history in the 2018 midterms, 41 seats in the House. The fact that we are seeing the exact same trends play out right now does not bode well for Republicans come midterms. And clearly, they're well aware, which is why even a Republican Party that will sacrifice its firstborn if the God King demands it is starting to show up on TV and online pushing back against his positions. I mean, honestly, this is a party where Ronna McDaniel Romney took Romney out of her own name because Trump didn't like her uncle. For these people to show any pushback is incredible. Now, I'm under no illusions that this means we're going to see all of Donald Trump's groveling sycophants and mouthpieces suddenly abandon him in droves, but remember, these people are reactive. They don't lead based on their purported morals or values, they react to political incentives. That's why you've got people like Marco Rubio who one day say stuff like this.
You compared Donald Trump to a third world dictator yesterday in an interview with the New York Times. How so?
Well, I don't know about a dictator. I said a third world strongman. He's running for president, so no matter what, he won't be a dictator unless our republic completely crumbles, which I don't anticipate it will. But yeah, here's what happens in many countries around the world. You have a leader that emerges and basically says, don't put your faith in yourselves, don't put your faith in society, put your faith in me. I'm a strong leader, and I'm going to make things better all by myself. This is very typical. You see it in the third world. You see it a lot in Latin America for decades. It's basically the argument he's making that he single-handedly is going to turn the country around. We've never been that kind of country. We have a president. The president is an American citizen who serves for a period of time, constrained by the constitutions and the powers vested in that office. The president works for the people, not the people for the president. And if you listen to the way he describes himself and what he's going to do, he's going to single-handedly do this and do that without regard for whether it's legal or not. Look, I think people are going to have to make up their mind. I can tell you this, no matter what happens in this election, for years to come, there are many people on the right, in the media, and voters at large that are going to be having to explain and justify how they fell into this trap.
And then just a few years later, that same guy is on national TV saying stuff like this.
Have you taken any steps to carry out President Trump's plans as he has said he would like to annex Canada? Have you taken any steps in that direction?
No, I think what the president has said, and he has said this repeatedly, is he was told by the previous prime minister that Canada could not survive without unfair trade with the United States. At which point he asked, well, if you can't survive as a nation without treating us unfairly in trade, then you should become a state. That's what he said. They'll have their elections this week. They're going to have a new leader, and we'll deal with a new leadership of Canada. There are many things we work with cooperatively on Canada on, but we actually don't like the way they've treated us when it comes to trade. And the president has made that point when he responded to the previous prime minister in regards to this.
So does the U.S. still want to make Canada the 51st state?
I think the president has stated repeatedly he thinks Canada would be better off as a state. And he has said that based on what he was told by the previous prime minister, who said Canada can't survive unless it treats the U.S. unfairly in trade.
All right.
In other words, they have glommed on to Trump because they view him as a vehicle for their own ambition and power. And they will say and do anything they feel they need to in order to stay in his good graces, even if it means completely and utterly debasing themselves in front of the entire world, as Marco Rubio is a perfect testament to. But to that end, if they begin to see him as a threat to their own ascent, then we will start seeing the rats flee the sinking ship. Again, I'm under no delusions that all it'll take is some highly unpopular position on the Russia-Ukraine war for these Republicans to suddenly abandon Donald Trump, but I do think that seeing any dissent, given the absolute loyalty that Trump demands, is consequential. And considering Donald Trump is likely never going to adjust his ways, then be prepared to see even more Republicans speak out in the coming weeks and months.